So, right, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, you gotta sell. That's inevitable. And if we're going to sell, we might as well have some skills and strategies that make it simple and easy. And people are lacking in that quite often. And so I put together this little thought. So first and foremost, job number one is we have to have a useful and inspiring perspective about selling. So if my story about selling is that it's a necessary evil or just plain evil, it's never going to be simple. It's always going to be a fight, right? So there's lots of other perspectives out there on selling that make a difference, right? So what if selling is about helping people to do better and be better? What if selling is helping people get more of what they want? What if selling is helping people add quality to their life? Giving people options they didn't have before, supporting people, loving people, things like that, right? So you have to come up with your own definition of what selling done well actually is, and then operate out of that perspective. Because otherwise it's going to be a massive fight every time you engage in sales, and then you're going to be bringing that negative energy to the process, and you're going to be getting in your own way. So job number one is you have to have an inspiring context from which to sell. And my job is to help people do better and be better. That's my job. That's what I do. And that's what I do when I sell. Right? And so then I'm out there looking for the people who are looking to do better or to be better. And my job is to help them. Okay, so that's job number one. Now, second thing is we need to get on the same side of the table as the person our prospect, the person we're selling to, right? And so, first of all, they're a person. They're not a prospect. I mean, yes, we've got to have a title for them, but oftentimes when people say prospect, they're like depersonalizing people, dehumanizing people, and that's not going to help. They're a person, right? But we need to get on the same side of the table as them, both literally and figuratively, right? So literally is sit on the same side of the table as them. It's a different energy when you're sitting across the table and there's that barrier between you. And if you don't believe me, try it. Sit with somebody and talk with them across the table, and then slide next to them or at a 90-degree angle to them and talk again, and it feels different, right? Because we're looking the same way. We're on the same page. I'm with you. It creates a different energy. So get on the same side of the table as them literally. And then metaphorically, we want to be on the same side of the table as them as well. So how do you do that? Well, a couple things. One is be genuinely curious about who that person is. Who is that person? What do they need? How can I serve and contribute and make a difference for this person? And be genuinely curious about that. Now, how I can serve and contribute might end up being that it's not my product or service. It's okay, right? Zig Ziglar's old famous saying, help enough other people get what they want and you'll surely get what you want too, right? If I contribute to that person, I'm putting good out into the world, and what comes around goes around. It's all going to take care of itself. So how can I serve? How can I contribute? And if it's with my product and service, and of course, that is fantastic. And if it's not my product and service, that's all good too. Serve and contribute. How can I make a difference? How can I add quality to this person's life? Second way to get on the same side of that table is, what kind of vision do we hold of that person in our heads? Do I see them as a loser, an idiot, a problem? Not very inspiring. Doesn't get me on the same side of the table. What if I see them in their greatness? What if I see them as truly amazing, as a wonderful human being? I'm special and you're special, right? You're special in a different way than I am, but we're both special. You're amazing. To see the highest and best in that other person, to see their potential, to see what's possible for them, to hold a vision for them, being happier, being more fulfilled, being more successful, having a better life. Right? Quantum physics, everything is energy. We're all connected. If I'm in that energy, that other person is going to be receiving that, and they're going to be liking it. Right? And that old saying, people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. Right? If I create that feeling in them, the likelihood of us doing business has gone up. And whether we do business or not, if I see them as amazing, that means I'm seeing myself as amazing, which has positive ripples in my own life, right? I'm putting out a different energy. My confidence is up. My belief in myself is up. So whether they buy or not, it's still a good experience for everyone involved. Now, they also talk about rapport, right? And rapport is a connection that says, hey, we're alike, you and me, we're the same kind of people, right? And there's a lot of stuff taught about rapport that's, well, first of all, it's overused and it's generally not that effective, right? So old school selling is, oh, you look around and then you see something and then you strike up a conversation. So, if you look behind my head, you see a bunch of plants here. So then maybe you'd say, wow, looks like you have a green thumb. I like to grow plants too, right? And now, hey, we've got this common ground because we're both plant lovers and all of that. Now, to some degree or other, that works, especially if it's genuine. But if I'm sitting here talking about the plants and I don't even have a single plant in my house, then I'm lying, right? And that's, oh yeah, plants are great. And it's incongruent and everything's energy that gets communicated, and it creates at a non-conscious level, it creates a disconnect, it creates a distrust, that sort of thing. So sometimes we can pick something and strike up a conversation and it can be genuine and that works. But there's better ways of creating rapport. And there's matching and mirroring from neurolinguistic programming, and I'm not going to go into that here, but that's a pretty cool thing. What I do want to talk about briefly, and it's just going to be briefly because I could do a whole long talk on this. In fact, I wrote a book on this. It's a thing called acknowledgement. And our book that I wrote with my friend Madison Gray is called The Motivation Myth. And acknowledgement is a very different sort of communication skill that's going to seem weird at first, but when you use it, you see that it really works. And before I explain what acknowledgement is, I'm going to talk about why it's necessary. And why it's necessary is because there's a big problem with praise and compliments. Those tools don't do what we think they do. We think praise inspires people, uplifts them, makes them feel better, makes them want to do more of the same, and say compliments as well. But if you stop and pay attention, most of the time when you when you compliment somebody, you can see that it makes them uncomfortable. And they'll deflect and deflect and, oh, no, not now, that's this old thing. No, this isn't that nice of a shirt, whatever it is you're saying, right? They'll deflect, they'll squirm. It makes them feel uncomfortable. And making somebody feel uncomfortable is not a rapport building skill. Don't take my word on it, just pay attention. Watch what happens most of the time when people get complimented. Their energy goes down, the connection decreases. They think, oh gosh, what do they want? They belittle themselves, they argue for their own limitations. Same thing with praise. And there's studies, all kinds of psychology studies done on the inverse power of praise. That praise typically doesn't support people to do better, it supports them to limit themselves. But this is what we know. We've been complimenting and praising our whole lives, thinking it's good people skills. So I'm just inviting you to watch what happens and see that it usually doesn't bring people's energy up, doesn't bring their belief up in themselves, doesn't create connection. Instead, it makes them uncomfortable, and making people uncomfortable is not a good selling strategy. So the alternative is this thing called an acknowledgement. And an acknowledgement is what the other person did or the result he or she produced, and it's delivered without any of my judgments or opinions, but it is delivered with a tone of appreciation. So somebody comes in and they say, I've been trying for years to lose weight. That's what they've done. You've been trying to lose weight. Now that might sound kind of weird, parroting back to them exactly what they just said. Polly wants a cracker. But it works because it goes inside and they go, yeah, I have. Right? So people will tell you what they've been doing, what they're proud of, what they want to be acknowledged for. And if they take the time and effort to tell you something, they want to be acknowledged for it. I've been in this business for 4 years now and I'm not getting the results I want. You've been in your business for 4 years now. You've been, right? I'm just repeating back to them what they did, the result they produced, with that tone of appreciation, and it makes them feel better about themselves. And when they feel better about themselves, their confidence in themselves goes up, their belief in themselves goes up. And when that happens, they feel better about themselves and they associate that with you being around, and you are now on their side. You are on their side of the table because you believe in them. You see them. You recognize them. You're giving them this high quality attention. Like I said, I could do an hour on this easy, and I'm not, because that's not what this presentation is about. So if you want more information about this, first of all, you can read an article called The Inverse Power of Praise by Paul Bronson. Secondly, my book, The Motivation Myth, goes way more into this. And oh gosh, if you Google my co-author, Madison Gray, she's got a bunch of recorded talks about this as well. So acknowledgement is a great way to get on the same side of the table as them. And I'll hopefully remember to work some acknowledgement examples in as we continue on here. So got to get on the same side of the table as them, because everything we're going to talk about from here on out, if we don't have a certain connection, that certain trust, that if they don't have a belief that I have their best interest in mind and I'm on their side, then none of what we're going to be talking about here works. And if I'm not on their side, then sales is gross. Then sales is ugly. No, I got to be on their side. I got to have their best interest at heart. My job is to help people who want to do better, right? Their best interest at heart. Let me help you to do better. Let me help you to have a better life. Let me help you get more of what you want. Let me help you with this problem so that your life is better. And they have to really believe that you genuinely want to help them. And if you don't, then sales is ugly and manipulative and all kinds of gross stuff. But when we're on the same side of the table, it's a beautiful thing. It's a rewarding thing. It's an enjoyable thing. It's a satisfying thing. And it pays. It's a profitable thing as well. So once we're on the same side of the table as them, then the moment that it's not about us, it's about them. We got to get into their world. We got to think about what's going on with them instead of what's going on with us. We need to get into their world. My friend Hugh Little, the sales wizard, says, here it is, folks, plain and simple and short. It's not your job to talk your prospect into doing what you want them to do. It's not about you. It's your job to find out what they need, clearly communicate what's in it for them, to use your product or your service, and help them to want to do that. If you take this to heart and you practice this, your sales are going to explode. So to get into their world, most of the time, if not all the time, means we need to learn to ask some really good questions, and probably ask different questions than the kind of questions we're already asking. You know, simple example, a retail environment, right? You walk in the store and they ask you, how can I help you? That's not getting into your world. A better question is, what brought you in here today? Or, you know, are you, depending on the store, are you looking for something for yourself or for somebody else? It's a different question that gets into their world more, and we'll get into that more in a minute here. So got to get, once we're on the other side of the table, then we got to get into their world. And a big piece of understanding your prospective customer's world is to understand the role of pain and pleasure and discomfort and how that affects the selling and the buying process, right? So there's our own pain and discomfort and, you know, oh, I got to call that person and ask for the sale and whatever stuff we have to deal with. But they're dealing with their own stuff. And if we don't understand that, we're not going to sell effectively. So dissatisfaction. First of all, if there is no dissatisfaction, there's no sale to be made, right? If I love my, fill in the blank, if I love my car, it doesn't matter how many whistles and bells your car has, I'm not in the market because I love my car. There's no dissatisfaction here, so I'm not looking. So we've got to start by finding out what is their dissatisfaction. And so often, instead of finding, to start vomiting features and benefits. Here's my product. Here's why it's so good. Here's all the things that help. Oh, let me tell you some stories about people who had these changes from using this product, and we don't even know what's going on with them. If you don't know what their dissatisfaction is, you're now basically playing blindfolded darts. And every once in a while, you're going to hit the dartboard, but most of the time you're going to miss. And if you hit the dartboard, you'll make a sale. But when we just start spewing features and benefits, unless one of those happens to actually hit their current dissatisfaction, there's no sale to be made. So what is their current dissatisfaction? All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how dissatisfied is that person? If they're 10 being the most and 1 being the least, if their dissatisfaction is a 1 or 2, they're not your prospect. Now, there's things we can do to potentially increase that dissatisfaction, because there's 2 qualities of dissatisfaction. There's latent dissatisfaction, that I don't even know I'm dissatisfied. And then there's active dissatisfaction, right? So since I used cars a little bit ago, let's use that again. If my car just blew up, I now have an active dissatisfaction. I'm in the market for a car. I'm going to be buying a car. But now so that's active dissatisfaction, right? But latent dissatisfaction is, my car's fine. It runs great. I'm happy with it. But then you pick me up and you're driving a brand new Mercedes. And all of a sudden I go, oh my gosh. Wow, this car is so much nicer than mine. And oh, look at all these little things. And all of a sudden, now there's a gap between where my car is, my current situation, and what's possible in the automotive world. And whoa, my satisfaction just decreased and my dissatisfaction just increased. And now I might actually be in the market for a car because my dissatisfaction got increased and my satisfaction got decreased. So that's something we can do with our products and service, and not in a manipulative way, just showing people what's possible, what's going on out there, what's possible, right? And we can increase their dissatisfaction. Because again, if there is not dissatisfaction, there is no sale to be made. Now with dissatisfaction, another piece to throw into this is that people move away from pain and they move towards pleasure. Now, more often than not, people move away from pain reactively rather than proactively move towards pleasure. So people move away from pain. So moving away from pain means that the pain of my current situation needs to be greater than the pain of the change, right? And people fear change very often, right? This is just who I know myself to be. This is the way I know things to be. Don't want to rock the boat. Oh, I don't want to have to learn something new. Oh, if I buy a new car, then I have to get financing. And, right now I don't have a car payment, but then I would have a car payment and my insurance would go up. And there's all this pain, right? So now we're comparing pains, and whichever pain is greater, we're going to move away from that. And so our job as a salesperson is to help people see the pain of their current dissatisfaction. We have to make moving forward be less painful than staying put, and let's talk finances here, right? Okay. Here you are right now, and there's really not as much money as you'd like to have, but I'm dealing with it. It's fine. Okay. So my current dissatisfaction is there, but it's not that high. So to do something about it isn't all that appealing. But now we can ask some questions about maybe, how does your wife feel about that? Or what kind of dreams do you have for your kid? Well, gosh, I'd really like to take my daughter to Disneyland, but you know what? It's not in my budget. Whoa, my pain just went up. My dissatisfaction just went up. all of a sudden I'm more curious about, oh, what can I do here? Or we bring the future in, right? Okay, well, it's great now, but you're however old you are now. Now imagine you're 80 years old. Do you want to be a greeter at Walmart? Because that's where you're headed right now. If you don't have enough money now and you don't change anything, that's your future. And people who are working, senior citizens who are working at McDonald's and Walmart, at least the vast majority of them aren't doing it by choice. They're doing it out of necessity, right? So again, now my pain has gone up, my dissatisfaction has gone up, and now contemplating that, the pain of that is scarier, is bigger, is nastier than my pain of actually doing something to change my finances. So now I'm more interested. Let's listen, let's talk. What do you got for me? How can I avoid that future? Because I don't want to go there. Right? Dissatisfaction. But talking about dissatisfaction oftentimes makes the salesperson uncomfortable. Oh, I don't want to go there. That's right. We have to get past our own discomforts and do it anyway. From serving that person, right? Anything I'm talking about, we could manipulate and use nastily, but you don't have to, right? I can go into my kitchen and I can find, I don't know, 40 different things I could kill a person with. But guess what? I don't use my kitchen utensils to kill people. I use them to cook, right? I've never hit anybody with a rolling pan or a frying pan. I've never stabbed anybody. I've never cut it. I'm not going to go on there. That's not how I use my kitchen utensils. I use them to do good stuff. Same thing with all these things we're talking about here. Sure, you can misuse these things. You can also use them beautifully, right? And I can use my kitchen stuff and create a really delicious meal. I can use these sales tools and create a really delicious experience, not just for me, but for that other person too. Again, back to the context. If my job is to help people to do better and be better, that's a pretty noble thing to offer other people. And these are the tools I'm going to use to do that. So rather than being content with the status quo, which really means they're settling for life instead of exploring how good can it get, how amazing can my life be. And so I ask them some of these kind of questions, and then they see that there is a gap there from where they're at to how good it can be. And my gosh, what do I want to do about that gap? Add some service and contribution to them. That's not manipulating or twisting. So if you've got a story that sales is manipulating or twisting, back to step number A1, you got to have an inspiring context. Otherwise, this sales thing is going to suck forever. Excuse the language, but that's the thought that came to mind there, right? Inspiring context. No, it's not manipulating. It's serving and contributing. Okay, so back to our job is to make moving forward less painful than staying put. And if that's not the case, you're never going to make that sale. That's all. And sometimes that's going to be the case, in which case that means they're not your person, at least right not now. Maybe things will change in the future, but right now they're not your people because the pain of moving forward is too big of a hurdle to overcome, and the pain of where they're at isn't all that bad. So people buy emotionally and justify their purchase later using their thinking and their logic and their rationality. But emotions are what have people buy. So the questions that we ask need to stir up emotion. Again, like the thing about not being a question that would lead me to saying, wow, I don't have the money to I'd love to take my daughter on the Disney cruise, but I can't afford it. Now I'm feeling emotion, right? Because, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. And oh, I'm feeling bad, guilty, whatever, because I'm not doing that for my daughter. There's emotion there, right? And then I'll justify it later rationally, but I'm going to buy emotionally. So questions, when you find out what their dissatisfaction is, then questions like, well, what kind of impact does that have on your life? How do you feel about that? What's that preventing you from doing? How's your wife, husband, kids, mother, father, whoever, some other important person in their life, how do they feel about that? How does that impact their life? And those questions tap into the emotions. How do you feel about your current dissatisfaction? Also, with buying emotionally, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, there's current dissatisfaction, and then there's, well, what do they want? What's the future satisfaction they want? The glittery thing they're moving towards, right? And that's a way of thinking of that is, what's your customer's mission? And if we don't understand their mission, if we don't understand what they're up to on an emotional level, then again, we're playing blindfolded darts. Where are you headed? What are you up to? What's going to solve this problem for you? What's going to make you feel happy? What's the bright, shiny future that you want for yourself, right? What's your mission? So again, questions, how do you find that out? You ask questions. Okay, so right now you can't afford to take your daughter on a Disney cruise. What do you want? How would you like that to be? Oh, and now all of a sudden I've got this mission that I want to be able to have an exciting adventure-packed vacation every year with my family. Okay. Now, if that future vision becomes strong enough, that becomes a compelling reason why it's important to do something different. Right? We're talking about compelling emotional reasons why. And so another question that's highly effective is simply, tell me more. Tell me more about that. So I mentioned this exciting adventurous vacation. Tell me more. Oh, well, gosh, I'd love to take my daughter to Tahiti. And what about the Brazilian rainforest? And, oh, an Alaskan cruise. And, oh, African safari. Right? I'm dreaming right in front of you. And oh my gosh, if you can get your person to dream right in front of you, they're telling you how to sell them. They're telling you what's important to them. Now, you've got to be a trusted advisor, that stuff we talked about at the beginning, and a decent human being for them to dream in front of you. But when you get them dreaming in front of you, that's powerful stuff. So tell me more, dig deeper. Another question that's really good is just simply, why are we here? Why are we here? You know, if you and I are meeting for coffee, it's not because we're thirsty. There's a reason that you wanted to sit down and have coffee with me. There's something in your life you want to take a look at. There's somewhere in your life you want to be different or you want to do better. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having coffee. So why are we here today? Now, this is after we're already on the same side of the table, right? Why are we here today? Why are we here? What's your ideal outcome of our time together? What do you want to get out of it? So to not really recap, but so step number one in the selling process is we've got to find out, what are they moving away from, right? What's their current dissatisfaction? Then the second step of sales done well is to be clear, what are they moving to, right? That future promise, that future satisfaction in their newly improved life. What is that? What does their mission look like when it's been fulfilled, right? And we need to know that too. Again, it's these compelling, we buy emotionally, so we need to know the compelling emotional reasons why this is relevant in the first place and important in the second place, right? Compelling emotional reasons why I got to get out of here, and compelling emotional reasons why that is the place for me to be. So a great exercise is to grab a piece of paper and answer these, and a pen, and answer these 4 questions, thinking about your ideal customer, or, your ideal customer. or customers, right? So question number one, what is their current dissatisfaction? Right? What's the pain that's driving their life? What is their current dissatisfaction? And what emotions do they currently feel about that? Third question, what is the future satisfaction that they want? Right? That newly improved life. What is it they want? And what emotions do you want them to feel when they're there? What emotions would they not what emotions do you want them to feel? What emotions do they feel or would they feel when they're there? So what emotions would back to my example there, what emotions would you, Jonathan, what emotions, you wouldn't say what emotions. Jonathan, how would it feel to be on that Disney cruise with your daughter? Right? Now I'm dreaming right in front of you again. Oh my gosh, we'd be laughing and having the best time. And I'm sure if this was on my bucket list, I'd know some things that happen on Disney cruises, and I'd be able to say, I don't have a clue what happens on Disney cruises, but we'd be doing this and this and this and the rock wall. Again, whatever. I don't know what's on a Disney cruise. But I'm dreaming right in front of you. And oh my gosh, when people dream in front of you, that's gold. That is gold. And so our job is to be the person that it's okay for people to dream in front of us, right? That we have that much respect, that much seeing them as amazing, having their best interest at heart, that people will dream in front of us. What a gift to give people. Okay, so 4 questions again. What is their current dissatisfaction? And what emotions do they currently feel around that dissatisfaction? What's the future satisfaction that they want, and how would they feel when they have that? Right? When you know those answers to the person you're talking to or to your ideal client and prospect and customer, you can have some really powerful conversations with people that, oh, by the way, are going to be enjoyable and beneficial and profitable. Nito Cuban, I don't know who he is, I just ran across this quote, said, people don't buy products, they buy solutions that the products represent. It's not about your product, it's about the solution that your product represents. Right? So I'm not interested in skincare, I'm not interested in vitamins, I'm not interested in this product or that product. I'm interested in what do they do for me? How do they add quality to my life? How do they make me better? How do they make my life better? How do they make my job and career better? How do they make my bank account better? And if the answer to that question is a blatant, yeah, look, here's how they make my life better, then I'm going to buy. Okay, so now let's switch gears here slightly. And earlier we mentioned that it's so important to be in our customer's world. So we have to remember that in our customer's world, there's a lot of fear. And just like you might have had fear to reach out and call that person and follow up or set the appointment or whatever, they've got fear about meeting with you. And they've got fear about becoming a customer or client. And their comfort zone and cognitive dissonance, which I'll talk about in just a minute, right? They have fears too. And that's where moving away, the pain they're trying to escape has to be greater than the pain of change, right? Because they're going to have fears like, what if this doesn't work? And if this doesn't work, is it the product's fault or is it my fault? Oh my gosh, now we've got an existential crisis on our hands. And what will other people think if I do this? Is it a wise decision? Is this the right choice for me? Can I afford it? Is it worth it? This isn't who I know myself to be. So now let's say that, network marketing, right? I'm talking to you about, hey, do you want to join my team? But you have this fear of, well, selling that's not who I know myself to be. That's not what I do. Oh my gosh, that's a big fear. That's not me. I don't know how to do that. Right? So there's all kinds of fear that are going to make people not want to buy, right? And again, people move away from fear and move towards pleasure, but usually, or pain, not fear, but fear fits in there too. They move away from pain. And sometimes it's just move away from pain. I don't care where I move. And sometimes it's moving towards pleasure. So if you think of those old-fashioned balance scales, then putting this all together, on one side of the scale, I've got their current dissatisfaction. And if their current dissatisfaction is higher than any perceived future benefit, then the scales are going to be tipped in this direction and they're not moving. So I need to adjust the scales this way so that the perceived benefit is well worth what's so much more attractive than this current dissatisfaction that I have no choice but to move. And now also we can throw into that scale perceived costs and their fears, right? So if the benefit isn't real enough, tangible enough, bright and shiny enough, isn't the answer to my current dissatisfaction, then there's no way I'm going to get past my fears because it's not worth it. And then cost will certainly become an issue. But if this future promise is bright enough, brilliant enough, magnetic enough, then cost becomes irrelevant. Because haven't we all bought something where it didn't matter what the price was because that's mine. I need that. For whatever reason, whatever story we're telling ourselves, I need that. So cost was never even relevant. Whatever price it was, I'm paying it. So the whole balance scale thing, just to think of it, there's costs and fears and current dissatisfaction, and then on the other side is the answer to their current dissatisfaction and all of that, right? So we selling made simple is paying attention to that stuff. Now these concepts are, hopefully the way I presented them, fairly simple, but as with anything, this is a matter of practice. And anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly at first. So you start with this and be awkward and all that kind of thing. That's fine, no big deal. Because guess what? If you keep practicing, you'll get better at it. And the acknowledgement piece that I talked about earlier, when you start with that, it's going to be awkward as can be. But if you stick with it, you'll get a heck of a lot better at it, and it'll produce a much stronger impact. Now, one other thing to kind of tie this all together, but that needs to be in this discussion, is this thing of cognitive dissonance, right? Who you know yourself to be is an incredibly strong force in your life. Incredibly strong force in your life. And it's an incredibly strong force in your customer's life, your prospect's life, right? So just like in selling, people have chicken lists, right? Because there's a story that says, oh, people like me can't call people like that because they're too awesome, too wealthy, too beautiful, too something, right? Oh, people like me, we don't call people like that. And cognitive dissonance, this is a story about who I am. That's not true, it's just made up. But we have that, right? And so when we think about calling somebody like that, then we experience that whoa, weird state where it's like your get up and go has gone up and went without you, right? Like an alien took over your body. And I mean, really, how hard is it to pick one of these little things up and press 10 digits? Is Jonathan, is Bob there? It's not really that hard, but yet we'll stare at that phone and I just thought of this video from the Minions, whatever that movie is called. He needs to make a phone call. He met a woman, and so he's looking at his phone, and next thing you know, he's like under the desk, peeping up over the top, and he ends up pulling out a flamethrower and melting the phone, right? Instead of calling this woman to ask for a date. Perfect video, because this is what we do, right? That's that cognitive dissonance about, oh, I can't do that. So it's important to remember that part of your job in helping people create better lives, part of your job in selling people is selling people that it can be different, that it is possible for you to change, that it is possible for you to get different results, that depending on the nature of the sale, and that hey, this is going to take you outside of your comfort zone, and it's okay, right? We need to change our relationship to discomfort. Now that's a whole nother talk too. And if you go to jonathanmanske.com/death-by-comfort, there's an hour-long audio on there that goes into this, our relationship to our comfort zone, right? People, gosh, I'm just all over the place here. People have a not useful relationship to discomfort. People run away from discomfort instead of leaning into the discomfort. And the life of your dreams and the life of your customer and prospects' dreams lives outside of their comfort zone. So if we keep on doing the same thing we've been doing, we'll keep on getting the same results we've been getting, which has us be where we are right now, which with our current dissatisfaction. So understanding this whole cognitive dissonance piece, and that it's essential to get outside of our comfort zone, and understanding that for yourself and being able to support the people in your life, including prospects, about the comfort zone thing can be a huge thing as well. Yeah. Oh, back to the network marketing business example. I can't sell. I don't know how to sell. I can't sell. I could never do that. Okay, that's where they are now. That's their cognitive dissonance, their story about themselves. But guess what? They can sell. And they're going to have to work through some stuff in order to do that. So that's part of the vision that you paint them, right? About, again, the future promise, this new, what's the term I use? This satisfaction in a newly improved life. About how do you get there? Well, it's worth going through some discomfort for. So we have to change our relationship to discomfort. That discomfort is our friend. That discomfort means, you know what? I'm up against my limits here, which means something better is on the other side of this. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity for me to get more, be more. It's a good thing, right? But your customers, especially depending on what you're selling, are going to be experiencing this cognitive dissonance. This is outside of who I know myself to be. But guess what? They can get through it if you're there loving them and supporting them and that sort of thing. So, super simple sales. Again, these ideas, hopefully the way I presented them are simple. That doesn't mean they're easy. It's going to take some practice, but the rewards for getting better at selling are huge, right? Imagine your life, right? So let's just do what we've been talking about, right? So right now, the idea of selling, how painful is it? How your current ability at selling, how is that impacting you financially? Right? And if there's enough pain there, then it means it's time to do something different, right? Oh, selling is really uncomfortable and I don't do it that often and I'm not that effective at it. Ooh, there's our current dissatisfaction. Great, well, what are you going to do about it? Here's a solution that you practice these things. Now imagine this future where you're in front of people selling and it's light and it's fun and it's playful. And you're in front of people selling and they think you're a superhero because you're making their life better. And you're selling and you're taking lots of money to the bank for making people's lives better. Right? Is that a pretty appealing vision to move into? Well, guess what? You're going to have to wade through some discomfort in that journey to get from where you are now to get to there. And that's okay. That's part of the growth process too. Right? So if this makes sense and it's worth it, then it's time to roll up your sleeves and get uncomfortable and do it anyway and learn to sell in a different way. Right? It's the age of vomiting features and benefits is over. That kind of selling doesn't, I don't know that it ever worked, but for sure it doesn't work anymore. And if that's what you're doing, you're leaving a lot of dollars on the table. All right. Thank you very much. And any questions about this, feel free to get in touch with me and I'd be glad to talk about it with you. Thanks.